In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this podcast. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening today. Do you have a chronic health condition and/or a disability? Or do you support someone living with a chronic health condition or disability? Hi, I'm Joel.
And I'm Lani, and we're Imperfectly Human. Welcome to Chronic Conundrums, a podcast from the Sydney Children's Hospitals Network, all about our chronically chaotic lives. In our journeys with a chronic condition, we must become expert navigators of the extraordinary, because every day presents a new challenge.
We're here to tell you what to gain from those aches and pains, because we're more than just patients, surgeries, and prescriptions. We're people too. This episode, we're beginning our descent into diagnosis. Lani and I will bring you along in our journey with a chronic condition, caught in the in-between of sickness and health.
Approximately 29% of Australian young people aged 12 to 24 years are currently living with 3 or more chronic health conditions. Some people are born with that condition. Joel, what was it like to receive your diagnosis essentially from birth?
So I have a super rare condition. It's called PNPO deficiency. Rare to the extent where there are probably 5 people in the country with it, I think. Yeah, so really not a lot known about it, obviously. And I'm one of the eldest people in the world with it. There's not really anyone before me to go off of, there's no listed out treatment that they can do.
Like a plan.
Yeah, no plan. So essentially, it's a seizure condition where if I don't take a certain medicine or vitamin, then because my body can't produce the vitamin naturally, I get deficient in it and I end up having a seizure. And then the only way to treat it is with that same vitamin, not a normal seizure medication. So that's sort of just how I've grown up with having medicine every few hours at regular intervals every day. A bit of an odd way to live your life, I think, to the average person.
Yeah. So with my lupus, it generally affects my joints and my kidneys. So when I start really flaring up, my joints obviously get really swollen and my kidneys, I don't know what happens, but apparently the doctors say it's not a good place to be. I have really bad headaches, and it's sort of more physical in the way where it's like you feel so fatigued that like you generally like can't do your day to day when it gets pretty bad. And it comes on when I'm like either in the sun for too long, or if I'm getting over an illness, since it affects my immune system, my body's really, really sensitive to that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's quite an odd experience hearing about your condition from someone else, even though it was happening to myself.
Yeah.
I'd hear stories about when I was 2 and on a plane and something bad happened, and I have no memory of it because I was 2 years old and a baby who didn't really talk.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a bit of an odd experience in contrast with having a definitive moment in your life that you can go back to. Yeah. Where you have stages in your life pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis. Yeah. There's none of that really for me. And so there are doctors that helped me that I don't know the names of, which is just kind of weird.
Yeah.
So it sort of just sets my life up, essentially, where I don't know another life other than having this chronic illness.
Yeah. So in 2019, I started getting really bad joint pains, like in my fingers and in my arms. And I've always struggled with anxiety. So I thought that maybe that was like another symptom where I'm just
like a different
really
manifestation.
Yeah, like I'm really tense during my sleep because of my anxiousness. So when I wake up, that's why my body's hurting. And I went to the doctor and they did some blood tests. And at first they thought I had leukemia. So I went from transferring to different hospitals and doctors down to like oncology down in Sydney Children's. And I had a bone marrow biopsy and they found that everything was okay. So I didn't have leukemia, which was a really good thing. But that was a pretty scary experience. And this is all happening within like a week.
Yeah, right.
And then after that, they sort of just was like, oh, it's not leukemia. You'll be fine. Just go home. The pain will wear off. Maybe you're just sick. And then I went to Year 9 camp and I spent a lot of time in the sun, which I am now not allowed to do. And I started to flare up pretty bad. My joint pains, I would wake up crying and it would just be really unbearable. So they brought me back to Sydney Children's and that's when I was brought into the rheumatology department. And that's when they were like, okay, you have lupus. That's the reason for all this pain.
Right.
And that was sort of like really relieving to actually get an answer.
Yeah, of course.
Because I feel like a lot of that start was just like, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. And then to finally get an answer and to move forward from that was pretty good.
Relieving, I'm sure.
Yeah. Young people connected to Sydney Children's Hospitals Network have shared some of their diagnostic experiences with us. Let's feast into their facts of life in sound bites from our chat with them.
So I've never known what it's like to be, in very heavy quotation marks, a normal person. I was in and out of hospital altogether in my whole life. I've had around 40 major scale surgeries and over 1,000 medical procedures.
I was diagnosed at 6 weeks of age through a heel prick and sweat test. The condition over time just damages your lungs in the sense that we can't clear our lungs well enough like the average person would. So if they would have to have a cold or the flu, and they might have like a chesty cough, they can probably clear their lungs easily or in a different way. Whereas we have to do physios, therapies and be on medications to assist that, and also stop the production of possible infections to damage the lungs even further and scar them and make parts of them unusable. So in those circumstances, over time, the lung capacity that we have just decreases over time to the point where you either pass away or you need a double lung transplant.
I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2018 when I was in year 7, and the process of getting diagnosed was very lengthy and difficult, and there were a few obstacles to combat.
Upon diagnosis, your reality may be flipped upside down. Life is disrupted and identities unravel. Most people experience strange symptoms and sicknesses, their body and perspective changes. You may require treatments, medications, therapies, or even surgeries. It's a period of rapid transition.
Those who are diagnosed when they're young adults and teenagers can really struggle with their identity, body image, career trajectory, and relationships.
Negative beliefs about ourselves may trigger self-limiting behaviours. These feelings have the potential to stop us from achieving our goals. Have you experienced any negative thoughts about yourself after diagnosis?
Yeah, well, of course, I was in high school, so being on like 50 milligrams of steroids obviously has some effect on your physical body. So my body obviously changed and I was not used to it. And it really wasn't the best thing to wake up in the morning and look not my healthiest self, even though I was getting better and I was getting sick as well. My mind wasn't necessarily nice about that on myself, to give myself credit for what I have done. So of course I was beating myself up for not looking like the other girls, and I completely ignored the fact that I'm going through stuff that a lot of other people aren't going through,
Mm.
and a lot of other people don't even know about.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing where a lot of people have body image issues, but with chronic health, it has a specific reason and it's traceable to one thing.
Yeah.
And that one thing's completely out of your control.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time that just makes it that bit harder to
Yeah. And
really
it's
get
something
through
that you can't really change in a way.
No.
Where it's just like you sort of just have to deal with it. This is how it's going to be for the rest of my life, whether I like it or not, so might as well love it.
For sure.
And that was a long journey to get there, of course. You just have to build a bridge.
Yeah, no. A few years ago, so I had a liver transplant, and as a result, I have this huge scar
Yeah.
on my abdomen, basically. And it took me ages, like years and years, to feel comfortable about it.
Yeah.
Where it was such a glaring part of my body that anyone could just look at, and if you know what kind of scar it is, you know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But, you know, you don't know any of the story behind
Yeah.
it. So I felt just super awkward about having this mark on my body.
Yeah, like
that-
a whole part of your condition is like displayed.
Exactly. That anybody who knows anything about transplants can basically go, oh, you had a transplant.
Yeah.
If I was going to the beach, I'd wear a rashie, not because I was like insecure about my weight or anything, but it was just this physically branding
Yeah.
mark on my body, you know?
Yeah.
It was just definitely, it gave me negative perceptions about myself and how other people perceived me.
Yeah.
And just not nice because it is so out of your control
Yeah.
and you can't just decide to fix it.
Yeah. It's important to remember that over time, the eccentric aspects of everyday life become second nature and make us who we are. When you're going through this diagnosis and all these like treatment, you're sort of forced to like mature.
Yeah,
A lot.
totally. School.
Yeah, when you come back to school and you're forced to like mature and you're coming back as sort of this new person.
Yeah.
And then you've got people like running around and they're, like shouting, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why, but I felt like these people are so young.
Yeah, I had exactly the same thing.
Where it's like, but they're the same age as me. I went through high school with them. But within like this 2-3 weeks, probably about a month, I come back and I'm like, how was I sort of on that same wavelength?
Yeah.
Like, not in a bad way. It's just sort of like you feel like you've experienced so much.
It's like you're just at different stages.
Yeah.
Which is not like, it's not bad to be at one stage or another.
Yeah.
But you're just at a different one.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. A lot of people can like idolize chronic illness to a point where it's just like, wow, look at you. It's so amazing. I could never. Oh, I love when people say that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so funny.
Oh, you must be so brave.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh. I literally could never. Or like if I say, even just day to day, I go, oh yeah, I have an appointment. Like, oh my gosh, how many times do you have to go to the hospital? I could never do that. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Aw. What do you want me to say to that?
Yeah, also because if you have so many appointments and somebody's like, oh, I couldn't imagine, like, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
They're acting as if you're doing it because you can. And
Yeah.
you're strong enough to do the appointments.
Yeah, it's like-
In reality, you just have appointments.
Yeah.
And you need the appointments. And so you go to the appointments. You don't do the appointments because you're strong and
Yeah.
brave. You do the appointments because you need the appointments. And like with me taking medicine around the clock every few hours, you know, somebody would be like, oh, I could never do that. I just forget all the time. I don't do it because my memory is good.
Yeah.
I do it because I'll have a seizure if I don't.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not motivated to take my medicine on the basis of being strong. I'm motivated to take my medicine on the basis of not dying.
Yeah.
You know? So when people are like, oh, you're so good at that.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be so bad at it.
Well, you'd be so good at it.
You
if
would
it's-
be good at it if it was your life. Like,
Yeah.
you would just decide to take medicine every 3 hours
Yeah.
because you wanted to prove to yourself that you
Yeah,
could.
that's not how it works.
No, not at all.
Joel, do you have any outlets that helped you like handle your condition as you grew up?
Yeah, I think so, totally. I think music was definitely one of them. When I was in hospital, I actually played and learned guitar in hospital.
Wow.
So that was my most recent instrument acquisition, I guess, where the music therapist, I was linked in with her, and she would bring me a guitar that I could play. And a lot of the time I was in an isolation room, meaning that I didn't have any roommates, and the door was shut.
Yeah.
Which was obviously perfect for playing an instrument in hospital, where you don't really want to bother people who you don't know what kind of day they've had.
Yeah.
But definitely being able to distract myself with such a, I don't know, a personifiable thing.
Yeah.
You know, I can really put myself into it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously at the same time I sucked because I was learning an instrument for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy to think how, you know, I was barely able to play the right strings when I wanted to, compared to where I'm at now, where I'm a pretty competent guitar player.
Yeah,
I can
you
do
get to
quite
see
a lot.
yourself like grow. I know how to play ukulele. That was like my thing.
Sure.
Ukulele was
I
like
started
my
off
thing.
with ukulele,
Yeah.
and that's why I wanted to learn guitar.
Yeah, the same as me.
Yeah.
But I found it really difficult because with my joints affecting mostly my hands.
Sure.
So like all these chord shapes and then going like from ukulele to guitar. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is so complicated.
Yeah.
So now like my goal is I have my guitar always in open D tuning.
Oh, really?
And I try and like make the most simple chords from there.
Yeah.
So that I don't have to move my fingers as much. So it doesn't hurt as much. So it's just little things like that where it's just like it may feel like a challenge where it's like, oh, now I have to learn it a whole different way to everyone else. But it's also really cool to be like, oh, this is the only way I can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm learning it myself.
Yeah, and it's unique that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, you think about famous guitar players, and so many of them, you know, if they were just some random person, you go, why are you playing the guitar that way? That's not how you're meant to do it. But then, you know, they become superstars.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, well, that's their way of playing it.
Yeah,
And that's really
exactly.
special.
Yeah.
So, you know, you sort of take that under your wing. You go, okay, it doesn't matter that I'm doing something different to anyone else.
Yeah.
If anything, that makes it even better.
Yeah.
Because it's personal to me.
For people with lived experiences, chronic illness is integrated into daily life. For everyone around the globe, the media rarely shares correct depictions on TV, books, movies, and music. There's been a long drought of public knowledge about chronic conditions, promoted by inaccurate or negative portrayals in popular culture. What do you reckon is the current conversation on chronic health conditions in the media?
Well, I think a lot of the time chronic illnesses are omitted completely from media.
Yeah.
Or there's just no representation that you can even look at and assess.
Yeah, it's
you
like
know.
completely ignored.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think there is a move nowadays to include a lot more diversity in the media we see. But a lot of the time that's it's overlooking chronic illness a lot. You know, you have race and gender diversity a lot of the time, and you know, sometimes you have someone who is disabled, but most of the time the only way that it's portrayed is the disabled person has a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And you know, it
It
creates
feels also like very tokenistic.
for sure.
Where it's just like, okay, there's our one like diversity checkbox.
Yeah.
And let's move on. Well, my favorite thing to laugh about is on TikTok so Selena Gomez, she has lupus as well. And I find it so hilarious to see when people zoom in on her hands, like
Right.
shaking, make it black and white, super sad music, and like she's just going about her day. Like it's really they love to make people feel like they're victims.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And the scrutinizing of it
Yeah,
all.
it's just like, oh my gosh, poor girl. Like, I understand they're coming from a good place, but it can feel like it's very belittling
Yeah.
to only her faults. And let's all feel sorry for her in the comments.
Well, my condition is no representation because I'm the second oldest person in the world with the condition and the
Wow.
disorder. So,
You are the inspiration. That's the
sure, I'm the inspiration. Yeah.
And a movie came out recently called 5 Feet Apart. And the idea that they kind of showed a few things here and there is good and for the community to understand it. But to draw the community in and its watchers, they made it romanticized, which I think is really degrading. Like it should just kind of be told how it is, or keep it like on the Friends base or whatever. But the fact that they would choose like an actual genre about it and then continue, it's just really hurtful in a way. And I've heard also throughout the CF community that a lot of other people feel the same way.
I think disabled people should be getting disabled roles, not able-bodied people getting disabled roles. And a lot of people argue, oh, it's because they're a better actor. But at the same time, I see it as, I'm sure there's a plenty of disabled actors out there who are dying for their break into Hollywood, who would love to be able to play a disabled character. Or, you know, some movies that come out, it can be portraying disabled people as weaker or like babying and infantilizing, which is a really huge issue within the disabled communities.
Historically, the media has sustained some archaic or outdated stereotypes that distort genuine experiences of chronic illness and disability. Characters with chronic illnesses and disabilities have been devices for melodrama, comedy, and even villainy.
So let's say you're a big-time Hollywood director and you've been hired to make a film about your own chronic illness. Well, what would you do to ensure that the chronically ill character is created in a way that's accurate? What would you need to consider?
I feel like it's really important to have a perspective of lived experience.
For sure.
I feel like a lot of the media is coming from a place where they're commenting on something that's completely irrelevant to their experience, or it's just face value, how they see things. For example, like on TikTok, when you're seeing all these people that have chronic illnesses and they're going through their routine, and it's really just what they decide to show the audience.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And I feel like it's really important to have someone to say, this is how it actually is.
Yeah.
Not this is how it is in the worst moments, this is how it is in the best moments. No, this is how it is from day to day.
Yeah, every day, ups and downs,
Yeah.
the in-betweens.
Yeah, exactly.
All equally important.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't just base it off the worst moments.
Yeah.
Just like you can't also just base it off the best moments.
Yeah, you can't just base it off, let's search up the condition
No,
and let's read the symptoms and let's act it out. That's
not
not
at all.
Yeah. Or let's talk about it in this journal article.
I feel like it's so tempting to just
Dramatize.
make it, you know,
Yeah.
exaggerate it. Only make it seem as bad as possible.
Yeah.
When with chronic illness, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Obviously,
it's so dynamic. It's always changing.
you have bad days and you have your regular days.
Yeah.
And you can't control what the day's going to be like. So I feel like to portray it in a movie, you would have to have the character not just be at their complete worst the
Yeah.
whole time.
Yeah.
You know, to make it really accurate, you'd have to have normal days. You'd
Yeah.
have to have them trying to feel normal.
Yeah.
But obviously also good and bad days mixed in with it.
Yeah.
As long as the duality of it all is really expressed.
Yeah.
I think that's a sort of important part.
Yeah, one of the most important parts, yeah.
For sure. However, with disability acts inscribed in international constitutions, progress has been made, changing the way we see and speak about chronic illness. We see Disney icons in our screen like Nemo, Vanellope, and Elsa taking a stand against prejudice and embracing their disabilities. Young children reciting the positive disability rhetoric as they play with character dolls. We see celebrities like Lady Gaga and Selena Gomez documenting their truths of chronic illness in a way that their vulnerability is empowering. We are accompanying a new stream of social media influences to their clinic appointments, G-tube feeding, ostomy care. Depictions of illness and disability are no longer a series of circus mirrors, but rather transparent sources of support.
That's a wrap on our first and one of the most important chronic conundrums.
We hope you'll continue on this journey with us. Next episode, we'll be talking hospitals, how to cope with a sudden health crisis, and take you through how to overcome your medical fears.
But for now, this is Lani and Joel signing off. And trust us, we'll be chronically ill next time you hear us. While we strive to support you on your journeys with a chronic condition, this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional mental health advice. If you find any topics potentially triggering, please seek help from a local mental health professional or contact Kids Helpline on 1-800-55-1800 for 24-hour advice.